The Sterling Grand Hotel, nestled in the heart of Manhattan, New York, glittered like a jewel under the city lights. A 40-story building with glass walls reflecting the sunset, a marble-tiled lobby, and crystal chandeliers hanging like stars. This was where the elite gathered million-dollar deals were signed over lavish parties. And Ava Johnson, a 28-year-old Black American woman, was dragging her tired feet after a grueling 14-hour shift. Ava pushed the cleaning cart down the 38th floor hallway, her calloused hands gripping the handle. Her navy blue uniform was wrinkled, and her curly hair, tied up earlier, now had a few strands falling across her forehead. Her dark brown eyes were red from lack of sleep, but still carried a glimmer of resilience. She had been working at the Sterling Grand for 2 years, a job just enough to pay the rent and the remaining student debt from the days she had once dreamed of becoming a chef. But that dream was now a faded memory, buried under endless shifts and mounting bills. Tonight, Ava worked an extra night shift to cover for a sick colleague. The clock on the wall read 1 a.m., and the last VIP suite on her cleaning list awaited. She sighed, telling herself that once this room was done, she could go home, curl up in her cramped Brooklyn apartment, and sleep away the worries. The door to Suite 3801 opened, revealing a luxurious space that made Ava freeze. A vast living room with white leather sofas, a sparkling glass table, and a massive abstract painting hung on the wall. A minibar stocked with fine wines, premium whiskey, and floor-to-ceiling windows displaying Manhattan's dazzling skyline. "Who needs a room like this to sleep?" Ava mumbled, shaking her head. She pushed her cart in and began her usual routine, dusting, changing sheets, and vacuuming the carpet. But when she stepped into the bathroom, she was nearly overwhelmed. The VIP suite's bathroom was twice the size of her living room. Gleaming black marble floors, a jacuzzi tub large enough for 3 and a small leather sofa placed by the window as if someone wanted to sit there and enjoy the view while bathing. "This isn't a bathroom. This is an apartment," Ava whispered, smiling faintly. She grabbed the glass cleaner from her cart, sprayed the mirror, and began wiping. But her movements were sluggish, as if her body was rebelling against her will. Fatigue crashed over her like a wave. Ava leaned back against the cool wall, her eyes closing briefly. "Just 5 seconds," she told herself. "And then I'll finish." She slid down onto the leather sofa in the bathroom, resting her head in her hand. The soft leather was too comforting to resist. Just 1 minute, she thought, and then the gentle darkness of sleep took her away. In another corner of the Sterling Grand, Ethan Caldwell stepped out of the private elevator to the 38th floor. He was the image of success, a 35-year-old white American man standing 6'1", with neatly combed dark brown hair and sharp blue eyes. His bespoke suit fit perfectly, and the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist sparkled under the hallway lights. As CEO of Caldwell Hospitality Group, Ethan owned luxury hotels worldwide, and the Sterling Grand was the crown jewel of his empire. Today had been a long day. Endless meetings with investors, tense calls with European partners, and dinner with politicians he'd wanted to escape from when he arrived. All Ethan craved now was a hot shower and silence. He lived in self-imposed solitude, no close friend's lover, or one close enough to enter his guarded world. Emotions are a luxury, he had once told himself, and he had lived by that philosophy ever since his father, a cold real estate tycoon, taught him that love only makes people weak. Ethan opened the door to Suite 3801, tossed his coat on the sofa, and unbuttoned his shirt. He didn't turn on the lights. The glow from the city outside was enough to guide him. He pushed open the bathroom door, focusing only on a scorching shower. But then he froze, heart skipping a beat. A woman was asleep on the small leather sofa, her head resting on her hand, curly hair spilling over her shoulders. She wore a cleaning staff uniform, and a cart of supplies stood beside her. The light from the window lit her face, highlighting her smooth brown skin and long closed lashes. She looked so peaceful at that moment that the world couldn't touch her. What the hell? Ethan blurted out, his voice echoing in the bathroom. He stepped back, his heart pounding from the shock. This was his bathroom, his private suite, and a cleaning lady was asleep right in the middle. Ethan's shout startled Ava awake. She opened her eyes in panic, lost her balance, and fell to the floor, knocking over a bottle of glass cleaner that rolled across the tiles. "Oh my God, what's happening?" she cried, eyes wide as she saw a man standing before her, half his shirt unbuttoned, his expression a mix of shock and fury. He was tall, brown-haired, and even then I couldn't help but notice how devastatingly handsome he was. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my bathroom?" Ethan barked, gripping the doorframe like he needed something to steady himself. Ava blinked, her mind spinning. She looked around the luxurious bathroom, the scent of expensive soap, her uniform, and then reality hit her like a punch. This was a guest. No worse, a VIP guest. And she had just been caught sleeping in his bathroom. I didn't steal anything. I swear," she stammered, raising her hands as if surrendering. I was cleaning, and then—" "Did you decide to nap in my bathroom?" Ethan interrupted, his voice laced with both anger and disbelief. "Is this a new cleaning technique, or do you think my bathroom is a public sleeping lounge?" Ava's face burned with shame. She stood up, trying to salvage what little dignity she had left. "It's not like that. I've been working all day and night. My body gave out. I just meant to rest for a moment, 5 seconds, I swear." She looked into his eyes, hoping he'd understand, but the cold blue in his gaze only made her tremble more. Ethan frowned, rubbing his chin as he tried to process this bizarre situation. He wanted to be angry. Truly, he did. A cleaning staff member sleeping in his suite was unacceptable, but something in how this woman looked at him, a mix of panic, honesty, and a hint of defiance, stopped him from uttering the words, "You're fired." She wasn't like the people he usually encountered, those who tried to flatter or exploit him. She was just herself, even in the most ridiculous of circumstances. "What's your name?" Ethan asked, his voice softening slightly, though still stern. Ava swallowed, unsure if this was a good or bad sign. Ava Johnson. I'm a cleaner here. And I'm sorry, sir." "Truly." Ethan stared at her momentarily, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Then, unexpectedly, he turned and walked out of the bathroom, speaking over his shoulder. "Come with me." Ava blinked, confused. "Come with you? Where?" Ethan paused and turned his head slightly, a faint smirk on his lips. "You just slept in my bathroom. Ms. Johnson, I deserve a better explanation, and perhaps a cup of coffee." Ava stood there, heart racing. She had no idea who this man was, but something in his voice told her this wasn't just a casual invitation. At that moment, she realized her life had just taken a turn she could never have imagined. Ava Johnson stood in the lavish living room of Suite 3801, her heart still pounding after the unexpected encounter with the stranger whom she now knew was Ethan Caldwell, CEO of the company that owned the Sterling Grand. Light from Manhattan's skyscrapers streamed through the glass windows, illuminating her face and highlighting her dark brown eyes filled with worry. She gripped the handle of the cleaning cart tightly, trying to stay composed, as Ethan, confident yet unreadable, returned from the minibar holding 2 cups of coffee. "Ms. Johnson," Ethan said, his voice low and calm. "Have a seat." "I don't bite." He gestured to the white leather sofa, placing a cup of coffee on the glass table before her. Ava hesitated. She wanted to decline, to run out of this room and forget the embarrassing moment that had just passed. but Ethan's gaze, sharp, curious, and faintly challenging, held her in place. She sat at the edge of the couch as if ready to bolt. "Sir, I'm genuinely sorry about the bathroom incident. I didn't mean to. I just... Too tired," Ethan interrupted, settling into the chair across her legs crossed. "I understand. But I'm not interested in apologies. I want to know about you." He took a sip of coffee, eyes never leaving her. Ava frowned, confused. "About me? There's nothing to tell. I'm a cleaner. I work pay bills and... that's it." She shrugged, trying to keep her tone light, but a storm of emotions was brewing inside. Why would someone like him care about someone like her? She looked at the cup of coffee before her, the rich aroma rising, but something was off. She wrinkled her nose almost unconsciously. Ethan noticed her reaction. "Is something wrong with the coffee?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his tone. Ava was startled, realizing she'd betrayed her thoughts. "No, nothing," she said quickly, but Ethan's eyes seemed to see right through her. She sighed, knowing lying was pointless. "It's a bit bitter. The beans are over-roasted, and someone added too much water, weakening the flavor." Ethan raised an eyebrow and set his cup down. "You know coffee?" Ava pressed her lips together, sensing she had just entered an invisible trap. "I know a little, nothing special." But in her mind, memories she had tried to bury flooded back. Ava grew up in a small apartment in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, where the scent of home-cooked meals always filled the air. Her mother, Lorraine, was a gifted cook who never got the chance to work in fancy restaurants. Instead, she cooked for community events and weddings, and sometimes provided free meals for struggling neighbors. Lorraine had a magical sense of flavor. She could taste a dish and instantly know what was missing, from a pinch of salt to a drop of balsamic vinegar. When Ava turned 7, her mother began teaching her to cook. Ava's happiest memories were evenings in their cramped kitchen, with a worn wooden table and jazz playing softly on the radio. "Flavor is a story," Ava Lorraine often said, stirring a pot of bean soup with a wooden spoon. "Every dish tells a story, and you must learn how to listen." Lorraine would blindfold Ava, hand her a spoonful of spice or a piece of vegetable, and ask her to identify it. "Oregano," Ava would say. Or celery, but slightly wilted. Lorraine always smiled proud. Those lessons weren't just about cooking. They were about sensitivity, noticing small details, and finding joy in simple things. Ava discovered she had a special gift like her mother's. She could identify layers of flavor in a dish with just one taste. She dreamed of one day attending a prestigious culinary school, becoming a chef, and opening a small restaurant where she could tell her stories through food. But that dream shattered when Ava was 17. Lorraine passed away from heart disease, leaving Ava alone with a pile of medical debt and a broken heart. She dropped out of high school, juggling odd jobs to survive. When she finally saved enough to return to school, she enrolled in a community culinary course, but the tuition loans quickly became a burden. Eventually, she accepted a cleaning job at the Sterling Grand Steady Work, far from where she belonged. Every day, as she scrubbed luxury rooms, her dream felt more distant, like a star she could see, but never touch. Back in Suite 3801, Ava looked down at the coffee cup, her chest tightening with the memory of her mother. She didn't want to share her story with Ethan, not because she was ashamed, but because speaking it aloud might stir up pain and hope she had fought hard to silence. Ethan tilted his head, studying her. "You don't just know a little," he said, his voice firm. "No one smells coffee and identifies what's wrong unless they know more than a little." "Where did you learn?" Ava bit her lip, torn between silence and truth. Something about the way Ethan looked at her, no judgment, just curiosity, made her feel safe, if only slightly. "My mother," she finally said softly. She was a cook, not professionally, but she could make any dish taste extraordinary. She taught me how to taste, smell, and understand food. But it was just a family thing. Nothing important. Ethan didn't smile, didn't mock her. He nodded, as if storing away the information. And now, you clean hotel rooms. Why not pursue cooking? The question struck Ava like a blade. She wanted to scream that she had no choice, that life was unfair, that dreams don't pay the bills. But she only shrugged, her voice tremendous. Life doesn't always go the way you want, sir. Ethan said nothing, but his gaze didn't leave her. He saw something restrained, a talent buried. He had met hundreds in the culinary world, from Michelin star chefs to elite critics, but no one had caught his attention like Ava. She didn't try to impress, didn't flatter, and that authenticity made him want to know more. Have you ever thought about doing something with your talent? Ethan asked, his tone now carrying a note of seriousness. Ava laughed dryly, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Talent doesn't buy a ticket into your world, Mr. Caldwell. I'm just trying to get through the day. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He stood, walked to the window, and looked over the glowing city. Maybe you're right, he said, turning back to face her. But what if I told you I could offer you a chance? Ava blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. A chance? What do you mean? Ethan smiled, a smile that was both confident and enigmatic. Tomorrow, come to the hotel restaurant. I want you to taste a few dishes. If you're as good as I think, we'll talk more. Ava felt her heart pound. Was this a trap? A joke? Or a door she'd never dared to dream of opening? She looked at Ethan, searching for any sign of deception, but saw only an odd sincerity. Why, she asked, her voice trembling. Why are you doing this? Ethan shrugged, but there was a spark in his eyes. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps something more profound. Because I hate bad coffee. I think you might be able to fix it. Ava didn't know how to respond. She only knew that at that moment, a small part of an old dream, the one her mother had planted, was beginning to stir again, even if only as the faintest flicker of light. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Le Ciel, the top-floor restaurant of the Sterling Grand Hotel. Round tables draped in white silk were perfectly arranged silverware, gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers, and the scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the aroma of espresso. Ava Johnson stood at the entrance, clutching the hem of her cleaning uniform, feeling like a fish thrown onto dry land. Just hours ago, she thought she would be fired for falling asleep in Ethan Caldwell's bathroom, the company's CEO who owned this hotel. But now she was here, summoned to the most luxurious restaurant at the Sterling Grand, following a strange invitation she still didn't fully understand. Ethan sat at a table near the window, looking composed in a charcoal gray suit, his sharp blue eyes scanning a financial newspaper. He looked up and saw Ava, motioning for her to approach. Ms. Johnson, right on time. Good, he said, his voice deep with a trace of amusement. He pulled out a chair, inviting her to sit. Ava hesitated, glancing around. Servers crept, prepping for the lunch rush, and a few early guests, dressed in expensive office attire, chatted in hushed voices. She felt out of place, like a mismatched painting in a gallery. Sir, I still don't understand why I'm here, she said, settling on the edge of the chair, her voice low to hide her nerves. If you plan to punish me for last night, say it. Ethan smiled faintly enough to unsettle her. I don't punish people by inviting them to restaurants, Ms. Johnson. I want you to try something. He signaled to a waiter who promptly brought a small tray with 3 items. A green salad with vinaigrette, dressing, a seared salmon fillet with beurre blanc sauce, and a glass of white wine. Please tell me what you think of these. Ava blinked, looking from the tray to Ethan. You want me to eat? Here. She glanced down at her navy blue uniform, feeling as though every eye in the restaurant was on her, even though no one was paying her attention. I'm a cleaner, not a food critic. Last night you critiqued my coffee just by smelling it, Ethan replied, leaning back in his chair, arms folded. I want to see what you can do with food. Think of this as a test. Ava's heart pounded. Was this a joke? A trap? But there was no mockery in Ethan's eyes. He was serious, and that scared her and intrigued her. She looked at the tray of food, and memories of those evenings in her mother's kitchen came rushing back. Lorraine used to say, "Flavor doesn't lie, Ava. Trust your senses." She took a deep breath, picked up the fork, and began. First, the salad. She took a bite, chewing slowly, letting the flavors spread across her tongue. The lettuce was fresh, but the vinaigrette was off. This dressing, it's too sour, she said hesitantly. It seems like they used apple cider vinegar instead of red wine vinegar, and it's missing a bit of olive oil to balance it. It overpowers the natural sweetness of the greens. Ethan raised an eyebrow, gesturing for her to continue. Ava moved to the salmon, slicing and tasting a small piece. The skin was crisp, but the flesh inside was slightly dry. The salmon was seared too long, she noted more confidently. The beurre blanc sauce lacks smoothness. Maybe not enough white wine, and the butter wasn't properly emulsified. It's a bit separated. Finally, she sipped the white wine, letting it glide over her tongue. This is Chardonnay, but not a high-quality one. It lacks minerality, and the finish is slightly bitter, probably from a poor vintage. Ava set the glass down suddenly, realizing she'd just spoken a stream of observations without thinking. She looked at Ethan, expecting him to scoff or say she had gone too far. But instead, he leaned forward, eyes wide with unconcealed astonishment. You just pinpointed every single issue my head chef hasn't been able to articulate for the past 3 months, he said, a mix of admiration and curiosity in his voice. How did you do that? Ava blushed, leaning back. I just said what I tasted. My mother taught me how to taste, but I'm no expert. Don't downplay yourself. Ethan cut in, his voice serious. You have a gift, Ms. Johnson. A rare one. He stood walking toward the window and looking at the Manhattan skyline. Le Ciel is Sterling Grand's flagship restaurant, but lately we've had complaints about quality. I've hired renowned chefs, but none could identify what you did. Ava shook her head, feeling like she was dreaming. Sir, I don't understand. What do you want from me? I clean rooms. I don't belong in a kitchen. Ethan turned his eyes, locking onto hers. Please help me fix the menu. Starting today, you'll work with Chef Marcus to taste and suggest improvements. I'll compensate you accordingly. The offer hit Ava like an explosion. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Work with the head chef. Me? Are you joking? I don't have credentials or experience. If I walk into that kitchen, they'll laugh me out. Leave that to me. Ethan replied, his voice firm. You have something they don't, instinct, and I trust yours. Ava felt her chest tighten. A part of her wanted to run to return to the safety of her cleaning job where no one expected her to shine. But another part her mother had nurtured in that tiny Brooklyn kitchen was burning brightly. This was an opportunity she had never dared dream of, but it came with risk. If she failed, she wouldn't just lose the chance, she might lose her last shred of pride. She looked at Ethan, searching for any sign that this was a joke, but saw only sincerity. Why do you trust me? She asked, voice trembling. You know nothing about me except that I fell asleep in your bathroom. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile, the first she'd seen from him. Because I've tasted the coffee here for 3 years, and no one's ever called it bad like you did. And because He paused as if weighing his words. Because I saw the fire in your eyes even if you try to hide it. Ava swallowed hard, feeling like the ground beneath her was shifting. She wanted to say no, to tell him he was wrong, that she wasn't good enough. But then she remembered her mother Lorraine placing a hand on her shoulder and saying, "You can do anything, Ava, as long as you believe in yourself." She took a deep breath and looked Ethan in the eye. "All right, I'll try. But if I mess this up, don't say I didn't warn you." Ethan nodded, his eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. "Just do what you did right now, Ms. Johnson, and we'll have no problems. Meet me in the kitchen at 3 p.m. Don't be late." As Ethan walked away, Ava remained seated, hands trembling as she held the coffee cup. She didn't know what path she had just stepped onto, but she knew one thing: her life would never be the same again. And deep down, she felt a flicker of hope, the kind she thought she had long lost. The sunset bathed the Manhattan skyline in golden light, streaming through the window of Ethan Caldwell's office on the top floor of the Sterling Grand. From here he could see the skyscrapers glitter like urban flames, but his mind wasn't there. He sat behind a dark ebony desk, absently twirling a silver pen between his fingers, his sharp blue eyes lost in the distance. In front of him lay a financial report, but he couldn't read a single word. All he could see was the image of Ava Johnson, the cleaning staff with curly hair, resilient dark brown eyes, and the talent that had stunned him in Le Ciel that morning. Ethan wasn't the type to get easily distracted. At 35, he had built a hotel empire from the wreckage left behind by his father, Robert Caldwell. Robert was a cold-hearted real estate tycoon who believed success belonged to those who placed work above all else, including family. Ethan had grown up in a vast mansion in the Hamptons, but it had never been a home. His mother, a pianist, left when he was a child, unable to bear her husband's harshness. Robert had taught Ethan that emotion was weakness, that love was a dangerous game that made people lose control. "If you want to be on top, you must be alone," he had once said, and Ethan had lived by that philosophy. He'd had relationships, but they were superficial women from high society, beautiful and suitable on paper, yet none made him feel anything but emptiness. He had learned to lock his heart away to focus on contracts, numbers, and the prestige of Caldwell hospitality. But Ava was an unexpected variable. This morning when she tasted the seared salmon and pointed out that the beurre blanc lacked smoothness because the butter wasn't properly emulsified, Ethan had seen something ignite within her. Not just talent, but honesty, passion, something he'd never found in any of the acclaimed chefs he'd hired. She hadn't tried to impress him, hadn't flattered him, and that was what made it impossible to look away. Yet at the same time, he felt unsettled. Ava was his employee, someone from a completely different world. Even a hint of personal interest could jeopardize the reputation he had built over the last decade. The media would devour him. Investors would question his professionalism. And worse, he wasn't sure he could open his heart without being hurt. Ethan rose and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. He recalled the moment Ava sat across from him in the restaurant, her hands clinging nervously to her uniform, her voice trembling but firm. "If I mess this up, don't blame me." She was scared, yet she had agreed to the challenge. That courage made him admire her and fear her effect on him. He wasn't used to being shaken by anyone this way. "What the hell am I doing?" he murmured, rubbing his temple. The office door creaked open, pulling him from his thoughts. James Harper, his longtime assistant, entered with a cup of coffee and a friendly grin. "Boss, I just heard a strange rumor. Did you invite a cleaner to taste dishes at Le Ciel? James, an Irish-American with red hair and a cheerful nature, was among the few people Ethan trusted. Ethan raised an eyebrow and returned to his desk. "Word spreads fast. She's not just a cleaning lady, James. She's got talent. James placed the coffee on the desk, chuckling. Talent? Or has she gotten under your skin? I heard she fell asleep in your bathroom. What's going on? Ethan frowned, disliking how James turned everything into a joke. She has a palate sharper than Marcus's. I want her to help revise the menu. James sat in the chair across from him, his demeanor shifting to something more serious. Okay, let's say she's good, but you know this could cause trouble, right? Staff are already whispering. If you promote her to a position that doesn't fit, the media will pounce. And you know how the board feels about scandal. James's words hit like cold water. Ethan knew he was treading dangerous ground. A CEO couldn't afford to be ruled by emotion, especially not with someone from the lowest rung of the hierarchy. But he couldn't deny that Ava made him feel more alive than any multi-million-dollar deal ever had. She wasn't like the others in his world, people who always calculated and wore masks. She was real, and that both drew him in and terrified him. I'm not letting feelings interfere with business, Ethan said sharply, though he knew he was lying to himself. She can help LaCiel regain its reputation. That's the only reason. James shrugged, unconvinced. Let's hope you're right. But if she messes up, or if things get personal, don't say I didn't warn you. He stood and exited the office, leaving Ethan alone with the storm in his mind. Ethan sat back down and opened his laptop, trying to focus on investor emails. But Ava's image surfaced again, the way she wrinkled her nose at the wine and tried to mask her insecurity with a forced smile. He knew he was taking a risk not just with his reputation, but heart. He had once vowed never to let anyone into his guarded world. But Ava had unknowingly cracked that wall, and he didn't know how to seal it back. The clock on his desk read 2:30 p.m. Ava would meet with Chef Marcus in the kitchen in 30 minutes to begin the challenge. Ethan knew he needed to maintain distance and keep things strictly professional, but a bold thought flickered. He remembered the upcoming international culinary event in Paris next week, a gathering of the world's top chefs and LaCiel's chance to regain its shine. Ava could help evaluate new trends and find inspiration for the menu if she was truly as good as he suspected. But inviting her to Paris wasn't just a professional decision, it would be a personal move, a quiet admission that he wanted her close. Ethan shut his laptop, stood, and grabbed his jacket. He told himself this was for LaCiel and that he was investing in potential. But deep down, he knew the truth. Ava Johnson wasn't just another employee. She was the person who made him want to break every rule he'd lived by for the last 10 years. As he exited his office and headed for the kitchen, anticipation and unease rose. He was making a gamble, not just on Ava's talent, but on his heart. And though he tried to convince himself he was still in control, he knew that from the moment he saw her asleep in his bathroom, everything had already changed. The kitchen of LaCiel, the most luxurious restaurant at the Sterling Grand Hotel, was a world of stainless steel and fire. Pans sizzled on the stove. The scent of fresh herbs mingled with melting butter, and chefs moved with the precision of a military brigade. Ava Johnson stood at the entrance, her heart pounding like it might leap from her chest. Her navy blue cleaning uniform seemed utterly out of place among the crisp white chef coats, and the wary glances from the kitchen staff made her feel smaller than ever. Just hours ago, she was an anonymous housekeeper. Now she stood here summoned by Ethan Caldwell, the group's CEO, to fix the menu, an idea she still found insane. Ethan stood beside her, composed in a charcoal suit, his sharp blue eyes scanning the kitchen like a general surveying the battlefield. Ms. Johnson, this is Executive Chef Marcus Reed, he introduced, gesturing toward a tall man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and an icy stare. Marcus stood with his arms crossed, his chef coat taut across his muscular arms, clearly displeased by Ava's presence. Hello, Marcus said, his voice cold as steel. I've heard you have. An exceptional talent. I'm eager to see it. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and Ava felt the weight of skepticism, perhaps even disdain in every word. Ava swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. I'm just here to help, sir. I mean no offense to anyone. But inside, she felt like she was stepping into an arena, every glance a dagger. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, a light touch, but enough to ground her. Ms. Johnson identified issues in this morning's menu that your team overlooked, Marcus. I want her to try again, this time with LaCielle's signature dishes. If she's right, we'll implement her suggestions. Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly insulted. With all due respect, Mr. Caldwell, my team is trained in the finest culinary institutes. We don't need a cleaning lady telling us how to cook. A few young chefs nearby snickered, and Ava felt her face flush. Ethan remained unfazed. If your team were perfect, Marcus, there wouldn't be guest complaints about dry salmon or broken sauces. Let her try. If she's wrong, I'll take full responsibility. The kitchen tensed. Ava glanced at Ethan, wanting to thank him, but also wanting to flee. She didn't belong here among chefs with diplomas and years of experience. But Ethan's steadfast and challenging gaze wouldn't let her retreat. She took a deep breath, recalling her mother Lorraine's words and the lessons from their tiny Brooklyn kitchen. You can do anything as long as you believe in yourself. Ava clenched her fists and decided she would not let fear win. Reluctantly, Marcus signaled to a cook who brought out a tray with 3 dishes: a seared scallop with yuzu orange sauce, a grilled Wagyu beef with black pepper sauce, and a glass of red wine. Let's see how good you are, Ms. Johnson, Marcus said, with a hint of mockery. Ava approached the table, feeling the eyes of the entire kitchen on her. She picked up a fork and tasted the scallop first. The buttery richness mingled with the tart yuzu, but something was off. The scallop is fresh, but the yuzu sauce is too sweet, she said, hesitant at first, but more assured. They added sugar to mask the acidity, but it dulls the subtlety. A pinch of sea salt would balance it better. Marcus said nothing, but his eyes sharpened. Ava moved to the Wagyu, slicing a small piece and chewing slowly. The beef is cooked to a perfect medium rare, but the black pepper sauce is underwhelming. It lacks depth. A dash of cognac or balsamic vinegar would elevate it. And the pepper's ground is too fine. It loses its texture. Finally, she sipped the red wine, letting it swirl across her tongue. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon, but it was opened too early. The flavors haven't fully opened, and a sharp tannic edge exists. It needs at least 20 more minutes to breathe. The kitchen fell silent. A few chefs exchanged looks, surprised. Marcus frowned, stepped forward, and tasted the dishes to confirm she wasn't bluffing. After a long pause, he turned back, his voice stiff. You're not entirely wrong, but these are minor issues. Customers are still satisfied. Ethan smiled, his eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. Satisfied isn't perfection, Marcus. I want LaCielle to lead, not just to be good enough. Ms. Johnson, any suggestions for improvement? Ava blinked, surprised to be asked directly. She breathed, recalling her mother's dishes, where every ingredient had a purpose, and told a story. Reduce the sugar in the yuzu sauce for the scallop, and add a touch of orange zest to enhance the aroma. Try using Sarawak pepper instead of standard black for the beef. It's milder and pairs better with Wagyu. As for the wine, invest in a decanter. Let it breathe properly. Marcus opened his mouth to object, but Ethan raised a hand. Follow her suggestions. I want the results in 2 days. He turned to Ava and nodded. Well done, Ms. Johnson. I'll see you later. As Ethan left, Ava felt the weight of every eye in the kitchen fall on her. Marcus scowled, but gave a curt nod and returned to work. A young chef with her hair tied high whispered to a colleague. She pulled it off. Ava wasn't sure if it was praise or sarcasm, but she didn't care. She had survived the first test, even if just barely. As she exited the kitchen, Ethan was waiting in the hallway. He said, "You did better than I expected," a hint of admiration in his voice. "But this is only the beginning. Next week I'm attending a culinary event in Paris. Please come with me." Ava froze, feeling as though the floor had dropped beneath her. Paris. Me. Sir, I don't belong in places like that. She shook her head, her heart pounding with both excitement and fear. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers. "You belong wherever you choose to be, Ms. Johnson. And you want more than just this." He paused, as if on the verge of saying something more, but instead he nodded. "Think about it. I'll wait for your answer." As Ethan disappeared around the hallway corner, Ava leaned against the wall, clutching her chest. Paris. A culinary event. A world she had never dared dream of. She didn't know if she dared to step into it, but she knew one thing: Ethan Caldwell had opened a door. And she wasn't sure she could return to the life she had known. Paris, on a June afternoon, was a living painting. Cobblestone streets, glimmering under the sun. The scent of freshly baked croissants drifting through the air, and the Seine shimmering like a silver ribbon. Ava Johnson stood outside Le Grand Étoile, a historic hotel with ornate carvings on its facade and glistening glass doors. She wore a simple black dress, borrowed from a co-worker, feeling like an actress cast in a play she didn't belong in. Just days ago, she was mopping floors at the Sterling Grand in New York. Now she was in Paris, invited by Ethan Caldwell to an international culinary event where celebrity chefs and acclaimed critics gathered. Ethan stepped out of a sleek black car, dressed in a navy blue suit that hugged his frame perfectly, his sharp blue eyes sweeping over Ava. "You look fine, Ms. Johnson," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Ready?" Ava pressed her lips together, gripping the small handbag tightly. "Ready for what?" "To be a joke." She glanced at the building ahead, where people in gowns and tuxedos laughed and chatted in French. "I don't belong here, Mr. Caldwell. I don't speak French. I don't know how to hold a wine glass properly. And I don't know how to talk to people like them." Ethan paused, turning to her, his gaze serious. "You don't need to be like them. You're here because of your talent. Do what you did at Le Ciel, and they'll have no choice but to listen." He placed a hand gently on her elbow, a simple gesture, yet it made Ava's heart beat faster. They stepped into the grand hall of Le Grand Étoile, where the air shimmered with light from crystal chandeliers, and the aroma of fine wine filled the room. Long tables draped in white silk displayed exquisite dishes: scallops with champagne sauce, herb-crusted lamb with Provence spices, and macarons sparkling like jewelry. Ava was overwhelmed by the opulence, but simultaneously, she felt a flicker of excitement. This was the world her mother Lorraine had once dreamed of, a place where every dish was a work of art. The event opened with a private tasting where renowned chefs showcased their innovations. Ethan led Ava to a corner of the room where a French chef, Madame Dubois, presented her deconstructed bouillabaisse, a modern take on the traditional fish soup. Ava picked up a spoon and tasted the clear broth accented by a drop of saffron oil. The flavors burst on her tongue: the sweetness of shrimp, the gentle heat of chili, the richness of saffron. But something was missing. "It lacks depth," she whispered to Ethan. "They used fish stock, but it hasn't been reduced enough. A bit of dried orange peel would elevate the flavor." Ethan nodded, his eyes glinting with approval. "Noted. I want you to tell Madame Dubois that afterward." Ava's eyes widened, startled, but a cold voice rang out behind them before she could object. Ms. Johnson, a tall, slender woman with golden blonde hair, approached a striking red silk dress hugging her figure. Claire Beaumont, renowned food critic, with a smile sharp as a blade. I heard Ethan brought a hidden gem from New York. Fascinating. Her tone was sweet, but her gaze was not. Ava felt her face flush, but she forced herself to stay composed. I'm just here to assist Mr. Caldwell, she replied, her voice steadier than expected. Claire raised an eyebrow and took a glass of white wine from a nearby tray. Really? Then try this. She handed the glass to Ava, her eyes daring. Tell me what it is, and the vintage, if you're as talented as Ethan claims. Ethan frowned, ready to step in, but Ava raised her hand to stop him. She didn't want him to fight her battles. She took the glass, inhaled softly, and then sipped, letting the liquid roll across her tongue. The taste was crisp, with subtle minerality, and a refined citrus finish. This is a Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley. Probably Sancerre, she said calmly but confidently. Vintage 2021. It was aged in stainless steel, which preserved its sharpness. The room seemed to freeze. Claire blinked clearly, not expecting Ava to answer correctly. Nearby, Madame Dubois nodded in approval. She is correct. Very impressive. A few guests murmured nearby, their expressions shifting from doubt to curiosity. Claire forced a smile, tightening her grip on the glass. Beginner's luck, but you'll need more than luck to survive here. She turned away, leaving Ava with the strange sensation of both victory and unease. She had passed the test, but Claire's look was a warning she had entered a dangerous game. Ethan leaned in and whispered, You did well. I told you belong here. His voice was warm, and Ava felt a spark run down her spine. He stood too close, and she couldn't tell whether it scared or thrilled her. The evening continued with more dishes, foie gras, with fig preserves, miso-glazed cod, and more. Ava tasted each, noting the balance of flavors and techniques sous vide confit reduction. She realized she wasn't just working for Ethan. She was slowly living her mother's dream piece by piece. Yet every sideways glance from a guest, every whisper behind her back, reminded her she was still an outsider in this world. When the tasting ended, Ethan led her to the balcony, the cool Paris air soothing her nerves. How do you feel? He asked, leaning on the railing, eyes set on the twinkling Eiffel Tower in the distance. Ava sighed, hugging her arms. For example, I ran a marathon in shoes that didn't fit. I made it, but I don't know how long I can keep going. People like Claire, they don't want me here. Ethan turned to her, eyes serious. They don't get to decide who you are, Ava. You do. And today you proved them wrong. He paused, as if wanting to say more, then smiled. Tomorrow will be even more interesting. Get some rest. Ava lay on the soft bed in her hotel room, staring at the ceiling. She had survived her first trial in Paris, but she knew Claire and others like her wouldn't stop. And Ethan, he believed in her, but his growing closeness left her heart in turmoil. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this world, but one thing she knew for sure. She wasn't going to run. Paris at night shimmered like a dream, the Eiffel Tower twinkling in the distance, the soft murmur of laughter drifting from riverside cafes along the Seine. Ava Johnson sat alone at the bar of La Grande Étoile, the golden glow of pendant lights illuminating her glass of white wine. The black dress borrowed from a coworker hugged her figure, but she still felt like an outsider in this luxurious space. Ava should have felt proud after today's tasting event, where she had stunned even Claire Beaumont and world-class chefs with her palate. Instead, unease gnawed at her heart. She took a sip of wine, trying to shake off the memory of all the judging glances from the event. With a smile as sharp as a blade, Claire had called her a raw gem and challenged her in front of everyone. Ava had held her own, but she knew this wasn't the end. People like Claire, those who belonged to Ethan Caldwell's high society world, didn't let go easily. And Ava, a housekeeper from Brooklyn, was the perfect target. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the bar at 10 p.m. There's something you need to know about Ethan Caldwell. Don't tell anyone." Ava frowned, heart pounding. She checked the time. 9:55 p.m. Part of her wanted to ignore it. But curiosity combined with a creeping fear that she was caught in a game she didn't understand kept her seat. She typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. At exactly 10:00 p.m., Claire Beaumont appeared. Her blonde hair gleamed under the light, and a sapphire silk dress traced her elegant frame. She sat beside Ava with the ease of someone used to owning the room, ordering a martini without needing to glance at the menu. "Ms. Johnson," Claire said sweetly, though her voice was cold. "I'm surprised you came." Ava gripped her glass, her voice calm but firm. "What do you want, Ms. Beaumont? I don't know whether this is round 2 of today's game." Claire chuckled lightly, taking a sip of her drink. "Oh, this isn't a game. I'm trying to help you. You're intelligent but naive. You think you know Ethan Caldwell, but you don't." She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, and handed it to Ava. A photo filled the screen. Ethan smiling brightly beside a brunette woman in a fine dining restaurant. The woman's hand rested lightly on his. "This is Camille Laurent, food critic. Ethan brought her to Paris 3 years ago, just like he got you." Ava's stomach twisted. She stared at the photo, searching for a sign it was fake. But the rare smile on Ethan's face, the same one she'd come to trust, shook her. "What is this?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Claire tilted her head, her eyes feigning sympathy. "Ethan likes projects. Girls like you, talented, fresh, different. He elevates them and brings them into his world. And when he's done, he moves on. Camille thought she was special too. Now she's working on a small paper in Lyon. Forgotten." Ava shook her head, trying to hold on to her faith. "You're lying. Ethan's not like that." But deep down she wasn't sure. She remembered how he looked at her with trust and warmth. But she also remembered the gulf between their worlds. He was a millionaire CEO. She was a hotel cleaner. Why had he chosen her? Unless it was a passing interest. Claire placed a manicured hand on Ava's shoulder, her voice low like a whisper. "You don't have to believe me. Just ask yourself, why hasn't he told you about his past? Why hasn't he mentioned those who came before you? You're just the newest toy, Ava. Walk away before it breaks you." Ava pulled away, her eyes flashing. "Are you done? I don't need your warnings." She stood to leave, but Claire grabbed her wrist. "Don't be naive," Claire said sharply. "Unless you play by the rules, this world doesn't make room for people like you. And Ethan, he writes the laws." Ava yanked her hand free, her heart racing. She walked away from the bar, the cool Paris air hitting her flushed cheeks. She moved through the hotel corridor, her mind spinning with questions. Was Claire right? Was Ethan using her? She remembered evenings in her mother's kitchen, how Lorraine used to say flavors don't lie, but people do. Was Ethan hiding something? Ava stopped outside her hotel room, but she walked straight to Ethan's instead of going in. She knocked, not thinking, only knowing that she needed answers. Ethan opened the door, shirt partially unbuttoned, hair slightly tousled. "Ava, what's wrong?" His brow furrowed in confusion. Ava took a deep breath, her voice trembling but resolute. "Who is Camille Laurent? And why is she saying, 'I'm just your entertainment'?" Ethan froze, his expression darkening. He opened the door wider, motioning her in. "Claire," he muttered, as if piecing it together. She told you, didn't she? Ava crossed her arms, standing in the middle of his lavish suite. She showed me a picture. You and Camille in Paris. She said you've done this before. Found girls like me, then left them behind. I need the truth, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan rubbed his temple, leaning on the desk. He was quiet for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Camille is a food critic. I brought her to Paris for work. Just like I got you, but it wasn't what you think. We had nothing beyond business. Claire wants you to doubt me because she's afraid of you. Ava frowned, still unsure. Afraid of me? Why, I'm no one. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze steady. You're someone who makes people question themselves, Ava. Your talent, your authenticity, it threatens them. Claire doesn't want you here because you make her feel small. And me. He paused, his voice roughening. I don't believe in projects. I believe in you. Not for what you represent, but for who you are. Ava's heart pounded. She wanted to believe him. But the fear of being hurt, the same fear she'd carried since her mother died, made her step back. Why didn't you tell me about Camille if you believe in me? Why did I have to hear it from someone else? Ethan sighed, a flicker of pain in his eyes. Because I'm not good at opening up. But I promise you, Ava, you're not a game. You matter more than you know. Ava looked at him, torn between trust and doubt. She nodded slowly, her voice soft. I need time to think. She turned and walked out, leaving Ethan with heavy eyes. Back in her room, Ava sat on the bed, hugging a pillow to her chest. The seed of doubt had been planted. And even though Ethan had denied it, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was gambling with her heart in a world that showed no mercy. But one thing she knew for sure, even if afraid, she wouldn't run. Not now. Night draped the Le Grand Étoile Hotel in Paris with a veil of enchantment. The Eiffel Tower glittered in the distance like scattered stars, and the city below seemed to breathe in a quiet rhythm. Ava Johnson stood at her window, gazing at the illuminated skyline, yet her heart was heavy. Last night's confrontation with Ethan Caldwell still lingered in her thoughts. He had denied Claire Beaumont's accusation that Ava was merely a passing amusement, but the seed of doubt had rooted itself in her mind. She wanted to believe Ethan, to trust the sincerity in his voice and the warmth in his gaze. But the fear of being hurt, the fear born the day her mother Lorraine passed away, held her back. She was a hotel housekeeper from Brooklyn. He was a millionaire CEO. How could a story like that possibly end well? Ava slipped on the same borrowed black dress, preparing for the evening's culinary gala. Standing in front of the mirror, she smoothed her curls and tried to mask the uncertainty in her eyes. What am I even doing here? She whispered, shaking her head. But a part of her, the part her mother had nurtured with the flavor of the words, doesn't lie, nor does the heart push her forward. She took a deep breath, stepped out of her room, and went to the grand ballroom. The gala was being held in a room fit for royalty, walls adorned in gold leaf-polished marble floors, gleaming under chandeliers. Celebrity chefs, critics, and business moguls mingled effortlessly, wine glasses glittering in hand. Ava stepped into the crowd like a fish swimming against the current. She spotted Ethan immediately. He was talking to a group of chefs dressed in a sharp black tuxedo, wearing a polite but distant smile. When he caught her eye, he paused and motioned her over. Ms. Johnson. Ethan said warmly, though his tone had a hint of caution. I'd like you to meet Chef Laurent. He was very impressed with your comment on the bouillabaisse yesterday. The older man beside Ethan nodded approvingly. Ava offered a nervous smile and tried to engage. She spoke with Chef Laurent about adding dried orange peel to deepen the broth's flavor. But all evening, she could feel Claire Beaumont's eyes on her from across the room, sharp and hawk-like. Claire didn't approach, but her presence was a constant reminder Ava was still being watched, judged. Ava took a sip of wine, trying to shake the feeling, but it clung stubbornly. When the gala grew louder, Ethan leaned close and whispered in her ear, "Come with me for a moment." Before Ava could object, he guided her out of the ballroom, down a quiet corridor, and onto a small balcony overlooking Paris. The night air was crisp, laced with the scent of jasmine from the garden below. The Eiffel Tower shimmered in the distance, a lighthouse in the dark. Ava leaned on the railing, wrapping her arms around herself. "You brought me out here for what?" she asked, a note of defiance in her voice. "I was doing fine in there. Or did you think I was about to embarrass you?" Ethan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, his gaze on the city lights. "You were more than acceptable, Ava. But I could tell you weren't comfortable." Did Claire repeat something? Ava shook her head, but her eyes gave her away. "It's not Claire. It's me. I keep thinking about what she said about Camille, about me just being another project of yours." She turned to face him, voice trembling. "I want to believe you, Ethan. I do. But I'm scared. Scared that one day you'll realize I don't belong in your world and leave." Ethan was quiet for a moment, the weight in his gaze unmistakable. He stepped closer, his breath mingling with the cold air. "Ava, I'm not good at talking about feelings. I grew up in a family where affection was a luxury." He paused, as if struggling against a tide inside himself. "But you make me want to break every rule I've ever set. Not because you're a project, but because you're the first person ever made me feel real." Ava's heart thudded as if it might break free from her chest. She looked into his eyes, searching for deceit, but found only raw honesty. "Real," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Because I can't survive it if this turns out to be just a game." Ethan reached up and gently touched her cheek, his fingers warm against her cold skin. "This isn't a game. You matter to me, Ava, more than you know." His voice was low, full of emotion, like he was revealing a part of himself he'd kept hidden all his life. For a moment, time stopped. Paris with its lights and noise faded away. Only Ava and Ethan stood on a balcony, hearts beating in sync. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that was tender, but charged with meaning. Ava closed her eyes, letting herself sink into the warmth, forgetting the fear Claire and the chasm between their worlds. The kiss deepened, carrying all the longing, sincerity, and restraint they had both harbored. When they finally pulled apart, Ava gasped for air, her hands clutching the fabric of his jacket. Ethan rested his forehead against hers and smiled softly. "I've wanted to do that since I saw you nodding off in my bathroom," he whispered, his tone teasing. Ava chuckled, but the smile faded quickly. She stepped back, eyes troubled. "Ethan, it's beautiful. But it's also terrifying. We're too different. Your world, people like Claire, they won't let us be." Ethan took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "I don't care what they think. I care about you. But I won't force this. If you want to walk away, I'll respect it. But if you want to keep going, I'm here." Ava looked at him, her heart a whirlwind. She remembered her mother's words. Flavors don't lie, and neither does love. But you have to be brave enough to taste it. She didn't know what the future held. But in that moment, she knew one thing. She didn't want to run. "I want to keep going," she said softly. "But I need you to be honest with me. Always." Ethan nodded, his eyes burning with quiet resolve. "I promise." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and for a brief second, Ava felt as though Paris with all its beauty and chaos belonged to them. But as they returned to the ballroom, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that Claire, or someone was watching. The kiss on the balcony had been a beginning, but deep inside, she knew Ethan's world wouldn't accept her easily. And while her heart soared, a quiet voice within still whispered, "This happiness may not last." Morning light bathed the Le Grand Étoile Hotel in Paris with a soft golden hue, but a storm was brewing inside Ava Johnson's heart. She sat frozen on the edge of her bed, eyes locked on her phone, heart pounding as she read the headline from a gossip site, Millionaire CEO Ethan Caldwell and his scandalous affair with a housekeeper. The article splashed across the screen of a notorious tabloid and accused Ava of exploiting her relationship with Ethan to climb into the culinary elite. It labeled her an opportunist and a lowly employee trying to infiltrate the upper class. Every word cut deep into the fragile self-worth she had worked so hard to rebuild since arriving in Paris. With trembling hands, Ava flung the phone onto the bed. Her mind flashed back to the kiss they shared on the balcony last night, a moment so real and tender that she had dared to believe she could belong in his world. But now the world seemed to be laughing at her. She walked to the window and looked at the Paris rooftops. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was never meant to be here." Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Flavors don't lie, Ava, but people do." Was she lying to herself for believing in Ethan? A knock at the door startled her. Ethan stepped in his face, shadowed with anger. He held up his phone, the same headline glaring from the screen. "Ava, have you seen this?" he asked, voice low, tinged with fury and concern. Ava nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "The whole world has seen it, haven't they? They think I'm a gold digger, Ethan, and maybe—" She paused, swallowing hard. "They may be right." Ethan strode forward and gently but firmly took her by the shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "They're wrong. Completely wrong. You're here because of your talent, not because of some twisted narrative." "I'll handle this," he said, eyes blazing with determination. "But I need you beside me. Can you do that?" Ava shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know, Ethan. I'm not used to being judged like this. In Brooklyn, I learned how to handle the struggle. But this is a different battlefield." Ethan sighed, pulling her into a steadying embrace. "I know. And I'm sorry for dragging you into this. I won't let them hurt you." He stepped back, meeting her gaze with a sincerity that made her heart skip. "I'm holding a press conference this afternoon. We'll face them together." Ava blinked. "A press conference? Are you insane? They'll tear us apart." A wry smile tugged at Ethan's lips, a flash of mischief in his eyes. "They can try. But I'm Ethan Caldwell. I don't go down easy." "What about you, Ava? Will you fight?" Ava stared at him, standing at a crossroads. She could go back to Brooklyn, to the safety of a world that asked nothing more than survival. But then she remembered her mother. The nights in their tiny kitchen, Lorraine whispering, "Every dish tells a story. And you have to be brave enough to say to yours." She drew a deep breath and nodded. "All right. I'll fight." That afternoon, the press room at Le Grand Étoile was packed. Cameras flashed, microphones jutted forward, the air thick with curiosity and anticipation. Ava waited backstage, gripping the hem of her dress to stop her hands from shaking. She could see Ethan at the podium, sharp in a black tuxedo. He looked calm and composed, but she noticed the slight tension in how he gripped the mic. He wasn't the emotionless titan the media made him out to be. He was scared just a little. And that meant something. "I know you're all here because of the article this morning." Ethan began, his voice clear and commanding. "So, let me be direct. Ava Johnson is not an opportunist. She's a rare talent who has improved the menu at Le Ciel and impressed top chefs at this event. She is here because of her ability and nothing else. Murmurs stirred in the room. A reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Caldwell, is it faithful that you and Ms. Johnson are in a personal relationship? Did that influence your decision to bring her to Paris?" Ava's heart stopped. She held her breath, waiting. Ethan looked the reporter dead in the eye, his voice unwavering. "I brought Ms. Johnson to Paris because she's brilliant. But yes, I care about her, and I won't apologize for that. She is extraordinary, and I'm proud to stand beside her." The room fell silent. Then an eruption camera flashes, whispers, questions shouted over one another. But Ava stood frozen backstage, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. He had just defended her, not just as a colleague, but as the woman he loved. A wave of warmth surged through her chest, but fear followed closely behind. Ethan's declaration would only stir the hornet's nest. Things would get worse before they got better. As the conference ended, Ethan made his way to her, his expression soft but resolute. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Ava wiped her tears and gave him a faint smile. "You just set the world on fire, you know that?" She paused. "But thank you for standing up for me." Ethan took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I didn't just stand up for you, Ava. I stood up for us." He led her away from the flashing bulbs and pointed stairs out of the press room and into a quieter hallway. But as they passed through the grand lobby, Ava caught sight of Claire Beaumont at the far end. Her expression was as sharp as ever, cold, calculating. Ava didn't need proof to know Claire was behind the article. And she also knew this scandal was only the beginning. Ethan's world was not forgiving. More storms were coming. But as his fingers tightened around hers, Ava felt a different kind of strength rise within her. She wasn't going to run. Not now. Not when she had finally found something worth staying for. The final night of the international culinary event in Paris sparkled like a symphony, lights from La Grande Étoile, mingled with laughter and the clink of champagne glasses. Gilded in gold and polished marble, the ballroom overflowed with star chefs, critics, and business elites. Ava Johnson stood among them, her borrowed emerald silk dress from a hotel staffer glowing against her smooth brown skin. Just days ago, she was an invisible hotel cleaner. She was the center of whispered gossip tonight, thanks to the tabloid scandal and Ethan Caldwell's daring press conference, where he defended her and confessed his feelings. Ava clutched a glass of white wine, trying to mask her tension. The scandal still lingered in conversations. Side glances, murmurs behind raised glasses. She was a cleaner, right? Does Ethan Caldwell love her? She took a deep breath, recalling her mother, Lorraine's voice. "Flavors don't lie, Ava, and neither does your worth. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself." She lifted her chin, unwilling to let judgment crush her. Ethan stood across the room speaking with a group of investors, but his sharp blue eyes drifted to her. He looked confident in his black tux, but she saw the tension in how he gripped his glass. The press conference had thrown them both into the eye of the storm. Though he said nothing, Ava knew he was under pressure from the board, from the media. The evening opened with a culinary showcase, top chefs presenting their signature dishes. Ava had been invited to sit beside Ethan and Chef Laurent at the VIP table, who had previously praised her insights. She sampled a dessert, a chocolate mousse with raspberry coulis and lemon zest. "The chocolate's rich," she whispered to Ethan, "but the raspberry's a little too tart. A touch of honey would smooth it out." Ethan nodded, pride flickering in his eyes, but the moment of peace didn't last. Claire Beaumont entered the ballroom, her golden hair glinting under chandeliers, a fiery red dress hugging her figure like a warning shot. She glided toward their table wearing a razor-sharp smile. "Ms. Johnson," she purred saccharine with venom. "It's so lovely to see you still here. After that article, I assumed you'd flown back to Brooklyn." The table fell silent. Chef Laurent raised an eyebrow. Ethan's grip on his wine glass tightened, his gaze darkening. Ava felt heat surge through her veins, but her voice remained calm. "Ms. Beaumont, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here because I deserve to be, not because you or anyone else allowed it." Claire gave a clipped laugh, tilting her head. "Deserve, Ava, you're a cleaner. You may have fooled Ethan, but you won't fool the rest of us. You don't belong in this world." She turned to Ethan with a pointed glare. "Does she belong beside us? Ethan?" Ethan looked ready to rise, but Ava placed a firm hand on his and stood up alone. She met Claire's eyes without blinking. "What scares you? Claire, isn't that I don't belong," Ava said, voice steady. "It's that I'm proving I do. I don't need your approval or anyone's. I'm here because of my talent. If you can't see that, that's your problem, not mine." The room held its breath. Claire blinked. Her smile faltered. She hadn't expected Ava to strike back with such strength. Chef Laurent gave a slow clap, nodding. "Well," said Ms. Johnson, he said warmly, "a person who knows their worth always deserves respect." Claire's eyes narrowed as she gripped her glass. She muttered, "You'd regret playing this game," before turning and striding away, leaving Ava buzzing with a strange mix of triumph and dread. She sank back into her seat, hands trembling slightly, but Ethan's smile eased her nerves. He leaned in and whispered, "You made me proud tonight, Ava," and squeezed her hand under the table. The night rolled on. Ava noticed a shift in the room's energy. Several chefs approached to shake her hand, asking her opinion on their dishes. One food critic from London, Mrs. Eleanor Wright, went a step further. "You have a rare palate," Ms. Johnson said, her tone crisp but respectful. "I invite you to consult on a new menu at my Mayfair restaurant." Ava froze stunned. She turned to Ethan, instinctively searching his face. He smiled, but she caught the faint flicker of concern behind his eyes. "This is a big opportunity, Ava," he said quietly. "What do you want to do?" Ava hesitated. The invitation from Mrs. Wright was a dream she had never dared dream, a chance to step into the culinary world as a respected expert. But it also meant leaving Ethan, leaving Sterling Grand, where she had not only discovered her talent, but also her heart. She thought of the balcony kiss, Ethan standing up for her in front of the world. She didn't want to lose that. Not yet. Not ever. "Thank you, Mrs. Wright," Ava said finally, her voice clear. "But I'd like to stay with Sterling Grand. Mr. Caldwell and I are building something meaningful, and I'm not ready to walk away." Mrs. Wright nodded, clearly impressed. "I understand. But if you ever change your mind, my door is open." She walked off, leaving Ava with relief and a hint of fear. Ethan tightened his grip on her hand, his eyes searching hers. "Are you sure?" he asked. Ava smiled and held his gaze. "I'm sure. I'm not just staying for the job. I'm waiting for you." Her words hung in the air, half confession, half promise. Ethan leaned forward and kissed her gently on the forehead, ignoring the curious stares around them. But as the gala wound down, Ava caught sight of Claire again, alone in the corner, her expression dark with quiet rage. Ava knew this wasn't over. Claire wouldn't stop. The scandal was only the beginning. Yet this time, Ava didn't feel small or afraid. She had found strength in herself, and with Ethan by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The Long Island sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange, casting shimmering reflections across the ocean waves. The Sea Glass, a cozy cliffside restaurant overlooking the sea, glowed with candlelight and soft music, as waves whispered like a natural lullaby in the background. Ava Johnson sat across from Ethan Caldwell, her sea blue silk dress hugging her frame, her curls cascading freely. She smiled as he refilled her glass of white wine, but a strange anticipation stirred inside. They had just returned from Paris after the international culinary event, where Ava proved her talent stood up to Claire Beaumont and braved a public scandal with Ethan by her side. Paris had changed her forever. No longer the timid cleaner she once was, she had become a woman who defended her worth and dared to love a man she once thought untouchable. But as their plane landed in New York, a quiet anxiety followed her. Could love survive in the real world where judgment and class loomed large? "What are you thinking?" Ethan's deep, steady voice pulled her from her thoughts. He wore a white shirt open at the collar, dark hair tousled from the sea breeze, and sharp blue eyes full of curiosity. Ava took a sip of wine and offered a gentle smile. "It's just, everything's happened so fast. A month ago, I was scrubbing floors at Sterling Grand. Now I'm sitting here with you fresh from Paris. It feels like a dream, and I'm scared I'll wake up." Ethan leaned in, taking her hand across the table, his touch warm and grounding. "This isn't a dream, Ava. It's real, and I want it to continue." His expression grew serious, his gaze locking on hers. Her heart skipped. "I have something to tell you." Before Ava could speak, a server arrived with dessert, a vanilla panna cotta with strawberry sauce and a delicate orchid garnish. She took a bite, closing her eyes to savor it. "Perfect," she whispered. "Natural vanilla, not too sweet, and the berry sauce has just the right acidity. This dessert tells a beautiful story." Ethan smiled, but the weight in his eyes remained. "You always find stories in everything, Ava. That's one of the reasons I love you." Ava froze, her wine glasses nearly slipping from her fingers. Ethan stood, reached for her hand, and guided her down a wooden path to the beach. Soft sand cradled her steps. The tide whispered secrets as the last rays of sunset kissed Ethan's face, sharpening his features with a golden glow. He turned to her, voice husky with emotion. "Ava, I grew up in a cold world where everything was calculated. I thought I didn't need love. I didn't need anyone. Then I met you, passed out in my bathroom, wrinkling your nose at bad coffee." He chuckled softly. So did she. Tears prickled in her eyes. Ethan sank to one knee. He pulled out a small velvet box from his jacket and opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small radiant diamond. "You changed everything, Ava. You taught me life isn't about deals and deadlines. It's about this moments like this. I want to spend forever telling our story side by side." Ava Johnson. "Will you marry me?" Ava covered her mouth, tears sliding down her cheeks. She looked down at Ethan once, a distant dream, now a man on bended knee offering her his heart. She thought of her mother Lorraine and those quiet nights in their Brooklyn kitchen. Love is the rarest recipe, Ava. When you find it, be brave enough to take it. But she also remembered Paris. Claire. The judgmental stares. Could she truly live in Ethan's world forever? She drew a shaky breath, voice trembling yet firm. "Ethan, I'm scared. Scared your world won't accept me, that one day it might pull us apart. But I love you how you believe in me and make me feel like I belong. And I want to try no matter how hard it gets." She smiled through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." Ethan rose, slipped the ring onto her finger, and kissed her deeply, fiercely, a promise in every breath. The ocean seemed to applaud. At that moment, Ava felt the world shift just for them. He rested his forehead against hers, whispering, "You'll never have to fight alone again, Ava. I promise." They returned to the restaurant hand in hand, Ethan's eyes alight with a happiness she had never seen in him before. He ordered champagne, and they began speaking of the future, not just weddings, but more. "I want you to lead a new restaurant," Ethan said, voice filled with excitement. "A place that honors your mother's cooking, those soulful dishes, but elevated with modern technique. We'll create something no one's ever seen." Ava's eyes widened, heart soaring. She imagined it a kitchen where she could tell Lorraine's story through food bean soups, cornbread Creole sauces, all reimagined with elegance. "You're serious?" she asked, her eyes glowing. Ethan nodded, gripping her hand. "I've never been more serious. We're doing this, together." But as they stepped out of the restaurant, Ava glanced at her phone. A new article had gone viral. Ethan Caldwell, engaged to hotel cleaner. Love or PR stunt. She clenched Ethan's hand tighter. Unease rose again. The Paris scandal wasn't over. Someone, maybe Claire, was still watching. Yet, as Ethan kissed her forehead, Ava made a decision. Let the world come for them. She wouldn't let fear steal this joy. Not now. Not ever. The sun dipped beneath the horizon in Montauk, Long Island, tinting the sky with a soft blush of pink. A small seaside garden, strung with white orchids and floating lanterns, glowed like a fairy tale. Inside a small tent, Ava Johnson stood before a mirror. Her white silk wedding dress hugged her figure, highlighting her smooth brown skin. Her natural curls were loosely tied back and adorned with a delicate flower. She looked at her reflection, heart pounding with joy and a hint of nerves. Today she would become the wife of Ethan Caldwell, the man who had forever changed her life. Just 6 months ago, Ava had been cleaning night shifts at the Sterling Grand Hotel to pay off student loans. Now she was the fiancée of a millionaire CEO, a rising culinary expert, and the visionary behind a bold new restaurant. Her journey from Brooklyn to Paris, from insecurity to self-belief, had been anything but easy. The judgmental stares, the tabloid scandal, and Claire Beaumont's hostility had nearly broken her. But Ethan, with his unwavering love and belief in her, helped her rise above it all. Today, they would begin their next chapter together. The tent's flap opened. Sarah, Ava's former co-worker at Sterling Grand, stepped in, eyes glistening. "Ava, you look like a princess," she whispered, hugging her tight. "I still can't believe it. One day we're mopping floors together, and the next you're marrying a CEO. You're an inspiration." Ava laughed, eyes misty. "Thank you, Sarah, but I'm still Ava. The only difference is, I finally learned to believe in myself." She held Sarah's hand, recalling those long nights at work when the dream of becoming a chef had felt like a distant flicker. Now that flicker had become a flame. Violin music floated in from the garden. The ceremony was about to begin. Ava stepped out, a bouquet of white carnations in hand, walking the flower-strewn aisle to the ocean. Guests rose, family, friends, and a few former colleagues from Sterling Grand, smiling with love in their eyes. At the end of the aisle stood Ethan, dressed in a black tuxedo, tall and striking. His blue eyes lit up the moment he saw her. He smiled, and Ava felt like the world had disappeared at that moment, leaving only them. The ceremony unfolded under the setting sun, waves crashing gently in the background. Ava and Ethan exchanged vows, their voices trembling with emotion. "Ava, you taught me that love is the most precious gift," Ethan said, holding her hands. "Through every challenge, I promised to stand beside you, to keep telling our story together." Tears streamed down Ava's cheeks as she replied, "Ethan, you gave me the courage to dream big. I promise to love you no matter how the world may change." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan pulled her into a deep kiss, full of love and promise. Applause erupted. Confetti danced on the breeze. Ava's heart overflowed with joy. The reception followed with a menu curated by Ava herself. Her mother's Creole black bean soup, Wagyu beef with Sarawak pepper sauce, and a velvety chocolate mousse with raspberry coulis. Every dish told a story of her journey of their love. 3 months later, Ava stood in the kitchen of her new restaurant at Sterling Grand Lorraine's table, named in honor of her mother. The space was warm and inviting with soft golden light, rustic wooden tables, and food-inspired paintings on the walls. The menu was a fusion of Lorraine's soul food cornbread, Southern-style fried chicken with modern culinary techniques like sous vide and deconstruction. The grand opening was approaching, and Ava inspected each plate meticulously, ensuring perfection. Ethan walked in, sleeves-rolled eyes filled with pride. "Mrs. Caldwell," he asked, wrapping an arm around her waist. Ava leaned into him, smiling. "It's better than okay. But I'm still nervous. What if the guests don't like it?" She scrunched her nose, a gesture Ethan had grown to adore. "They'll love it, Ava, just like I love you." He kissed her forehead and led her to the dining room. There, Ava froze in surprise. Her former Sterling Grand co-workers, Chef Laurent from Paris and Mrs. Eleanor Wright from London, had all flown in to support her. "You did it, Ava," Mrs. Wright said, embracing her. "Lorraine's table is going to be legendary." The grand opening was a resounding success. Guests raved about the menu. Critics wrote glowing reviews. Standing beside Ethan, hand in hand, Ava felt her mother's dream had finally come true. A few weeks later, on a quiet morning, Ava stood in the penthouse bathroom she and Ethan had just moved into. Her heart pounded as she stared at the pregnancy test in her hand, 2 precise lines. "Oh my God," she whispered, stunned and overjoyed. She was pregnant. They were going to have a family. Ethan entered, noticing her expression. "Ava." "What is it?" She handed him the test, but he was unable to speak. He looked down, then up again, eyes wide, tears forming. "We're having a baby?" he asked, voice trembling. Ava nodded, smiling through her tears. "Yes, Ethan, we're having a baby." He wrapped her in his arms, kissing her with all the love he held inside. "I love you, Ava, and I love our child." They stood there holding each other as a new chapter began. Looking out the penthouse window at the glittering Manhattan skyline, Ava knew her life had changed forever. From hotel cleaner, to wife, to soon-to-be mother, to culinary visionary, she had overcome every obstacle to find joy. Lorraine's table was a tribute to her mother's dream, and Ethan was proof of love's power to transform. The tabloids might still mention the old scandal. Claire Beaumont might still be lurking somewhere. But Ava was no longer afraid. She had Ethan. She had a family. And most of all, she had herself, a brave woman, ready to tell her story through every dish and every moment.